Tomorrow morning, your alarm clock will ring at exactly 7 a.m. You will hit the snooze button once, maybe twice. You will drag yourself out of bed, pour a cup of coffee you barely taste, and join millions of other exhausted people in traffic. You will sit at a desk from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., trade the best hours of your daylight for a paycheck, and go home. You will do this 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, for 40 years. And if someone asks you why you do it, you will probably say, because that's just how the world works. You believe that the 8-hour workday and the 5-day workweek are natural laws of human society, like gravity or the changing of the seasons. But it is not natural. It is an artificial construct. It is a psychological cage built by industrialists exactly 100 years ago to solve a very specific mathematical problem. You don't work 8 hours because your job requires it. You work 8 hours because the system needs you to be exactly tired enough to consume, but not tired enough to die. To understand how you were tricked into giving away your life, we have to look at history, and we have to dispel a massive myth. We are told that medieval peasants worked brutal, endless hours compared to us. But historians have analyzed the records, and the truth is shocking. Before the Industrial Revolution, a typical peasant actually worked fewer hours over a year than a modern office worker. They worked intensely during the harvest, yes, but they also had dozens of religious holidays, festivals, and long winter breaks. In 13th century England, a peasant had roughly 150 days off a year. They controlled their own pace. When the work was done, they stopped. But then the machines arrived. The Industrial Revolution in the 1800s didn't just change how things were made, it changed how humans experience time. Factory owners realized that machines don't need to sleep. Machines don't need festivals. And an idle machine was a machine losing money. So they forced the humans to adopt the schedule of the machine. The workday skyrocketed to 14, sometimes 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. People were dying of exhaustion. Children were falling asleep under active looms. It was brutal. The labor unions fought back, leading to massive strikes and bloody protests. They coined a rallying cry: 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. But the unions alone didn't give you the modern weekend. The man who actually cemented the 5-day, 40-hour work week was not a socialist. He was a ruthless capitalist. His name was Henry Ford. In 1926, Henry Ford shocked the industrial world. He voluntarily reduced his factory workers' schedule to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. His competitors thought he was insane. Why would you pay workers the same money for less time? But Ford was playing a game of four-dimensional chess. First, there was the math of the factory. A 24-hour day divided perfectly into 3 8-hour shifts. The machines never had to stop. One crew left, another stepped in immediately. But Ford's true genius, and the sinister trap that still holds you today, was about consumption. Ford was mass-producing the Model T automobile. He was making millions of them. But he had a massive problem. Who was going to buy them? If a worker is standing in a factory for 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, they don't need a car. They don't take weekend trips. They don't go shopping. They don't buy nice clothes. An exhausted human being is a terrible consumer. Ford explicitly stated in an interview, "Leisure is an indispensable ingredient in a growing consumer market." He gave his workers Saturday and Sunday off, not out of kindness, but so they would have the time to drive his cars, so they would buy gasoline, so they would buy picnic baskets, so they would spend their wages. The modern weekend was not given to you so you could rest. It was given to you so you could spend. Ford successfully engineered the modern consumer class, and for a while in the 1920s and 30s, this schedule made sense. The work was mostly manual. It took exactly 8 hours to tighten a certain number of bolts. But then, something incredible happened. The digital revolution. Computers, software, and the internet entered the workplace. A task that used to take an accountant 3 entire weeks of manual math could suddenly be done by an Excel spreadsheet in 3 seconds. Productivity skyrocketed. Since the 1970s, human productivity has increased by over 60%. Famous economist John Maynard Keynes predicted that by the year 2030, technology would be so advanced we would only need to work 15 hours a week. He assumed that once we produced enough, we would choose free time over endless labor. He was dead wrong. Because despite becoming exponentially more efficient, the 8-hour cage never shrank. Think about your own job. Do you actually have 8 hours of deep, focused work to do every single day? Studies show that the average office worker is only truly productive for about 2 hours and 53 minutes a day. The rest of the time is spent staring at the screen, attending useless meetings, and pretending to look busy. It is called Presenteeism. You are paid simply to be present, to exist within the walls of the corporation. So why? Why do we still maintain this outdated schedule if it's no longer physically necessary? Because the system discovered a fundamental psychological truth. If you give humans too much free time, they become dangerous. They might start their own businesses. They might engage in politics. They might realize they don't need to buy a new car every 3 years to be happy. The modern 8-hour workday is no longer about maximizing production. It is an instrument of exhaustion. When you finally get home at 6 p.m., your mental energy is completely depleted. You don't have the willpower to learn a new language, build wealth, or cook a healthy meal. You order food delivery, you sit on the couch, you scroll through social media, and you watch advertisements. You engage in what psychologists call revenge bedtime procrastination. You stay up late watching mindless videos, sacrificing sleep, just to feel like you have some control over your own time. And because you feel empty and trapped, you buy things to cope. You buy the expensive coffee, you buy the new clothes, you buy the streaming subscriptions. The system breaks your spirit during the day and then sells you the cure in the evening. It is a perfectly closed loop. The 40-hour work week keeps you just poor enough to keep working and just tired enough to keep consuming. But the illusion is starting to crack. The global pandemic forced millions of people to work from home, and the corporate world was terrified by what happened. Without the commute, without the useless meetings, people finished their work in 4 hours. The corporations didn't lose productivity, but they lost control. That is why they are so desperate to force you back into the office. They need you back in the cage. Because if you realize you can do your job in 3 days a week, you might start asking what to do with the rest of your life. So, what can you do? You cannot instantly escape capitalism. But you can stop internalizing its rules. Stop feeling guilty when you aren't productive. Rest is not a reward for working hard. Rest is a biological requirement. Stop buying junk you don't need to compensate for the time you lost. Because every dollar you save is a piece of your own freedom you are buying back. The 8-hour workday is not a law of nature. It is a 100-year-old factory schedule forced onto a digital world. Your time is the only truly finite resource you possess. Don't let them convince you that your only purpose is to build someone else's machine. Wake up, guard your time, and redefine your life.